Institute of Coaching at Harvard. She was selected by the Marshall Goldsmith Group as the #1 leadership coach in the world. Carol teaches at Harvard Medical School, as well as she's a professor at the Henley Business School. But what Carol loves the most is leadership coaching. That is her sweet spot. And what she likes to do is help leaders to create the impact that they want to have.
Well, in my life, when reporters have asked me that question, I always say, I won it. And they think I'm joking, but I'm not. I did win it. I was a clinical psychologist for many years. And one year, about 2003, I needed continuing ed credits, and I tend to procrastinate. And I needed them by the end of October. And this was like October 20th. So I was desperate to find some workshop. And I found one in coaching. And it was connected also with Marty Seligman, a former president of the American Psych Association. So I showed up and listened to the guy talking. And basically what happened is he knew he was very boring. He was very funny. He goes, after 2 minutes, he says, you've now seen my entire emotional range. So I hit you in the ROM. I'm going to offer someone free coaching tuition at the end of the day. So I stayed, and I didn't make that, but he said he'd go to a follow-up call and someone would win. And that was me. And after 3 of these coaching meetings, I felt like it was one of those near car accidents. You know, when you go, oh my God, I could have died. This was, oh my God, I could have missed this, because it is very different from consultation, very different from peak performance coaching in that, okay, so #1, you're really looking at the future. And starting with the future, not the problems. Right. You're really building the people's strengths. And then you're learning how to ask questions to help them navigate that journey. And for me, it was wonderful. Hard in the beginning because I'm a natural teacher. And so to shift to being a puller out of information rather than the disseminator was hard. But that's how it started. And then first just did kind of regular coaching, then more leadership coaching. And now I have a specialty in leaders who are scary. So most of my clients now are CEOs and C-level leaders of multi-billion-dollar global organizations. And they've had to be scary to become successful. And now it's time for them to learn something else. Right. So as Marshall says, what got you here won't get you there. So that's in brief how I became a coach. So what happens is, you know, when people give talks, they do these one-pagers about how great they are. I did a one-pager that basically outlined my talk and said, how am I doing? At the end, it said, do you have any coaching comments for me? So this woman comes up to me. She's beautiful. She looks a bit like Catherine Zeta-Jones with Faye Dunaway's cheekbones. And she comes up to me and says, why aren't you the face of coaching? And I'm like, because I've been a coach 3 months. And she goes, that's irrelevant. And then she started just speaking with me. And she said, I have some feedback for you, because I'd asked for feedback. And she goes, it's not for the faint of heart. So I said, like what? And she said, you touched your lavalier 7 times. You did this, you did that, you did this. You have world-class material. You're not ready for the world-class stage yet. Okay, fine. Then she goes, I feel called to be your coach. To which I thought, oh, great. I'm sure for X $100 a pop, you'd be glad to be my coach. And then she said, I'll only coach you for free. And that really got my attention. And she said, but you may not call my people. I'm like, she has people. Because if you want to make it on the world-class stage, you have to impose yourself on people. And if you can impose yourself on anyone, you know, on me, you can impose yourself on anyone. And that was the beginning of my coaching relationship with Ruth Ann Harnish. Wow. So I had this conversation with her. I then go back to my friends and they say, do you know who she is? I'm like, yeah, her name's Ruth Ann. Go, do you know who she is? I'm like, no. They go, Carol, she's a billionaire philanthropist and she's been looking for a protege. And darn it, it's you. Yeah. So I had the year of coaching with her, and then other things happened. I didn't realize it was testing and hazing me, and then gave me and Harvard $2 million to start the Institute of Coaching, with the idea that coaching needs a firm foundation in science
Yes.
and research and theory if it is to compete with the other professions.
Absolutely. I mean, I loved coaching, but having the science and the actual research, having an evidence-based approach behind it, just really propelled, I think, the whole field of coaching forward. And, you were at the beginning and the genesis of that. So, we also have something else in common. Somebody that you actually introduced me to him, and I love him. His name is Richard Boyatzis. And, can you talk to me a little bit about his intentional change theory and how you apply that with your clients, especially now during these times of, as everyone says, unprecedented levels of change?
This is sort of the backbone of the coach approach to me. And what I like about it is Richard has done many research studies that support it, intentional change theory. So basically, it's that you start out a coaching really thinking of your intention, which is, who do I want to be? If I was my ideal self,
Mm-hmm.
what would I look like? What would I be doing? What would I be planning? What does that look like? So if I was a 10 out of 10, what would I look like?
Right.
And then you start, as he does, this sort of journey of then after that, then, okay, so where am I now on that? And what are the gaps? But more importantly, what are the strengths that are going to help me cross that gap? Like the bridge between me here and the me there. How do I create that bridge over there?
Mm-hmm.
And core to it also is, how do I make sure I have the relationships that will take me there,
Right.
in terms of either a coaching relationship or, your own personal board of directors. So it's, who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what does that look like in terms of what I'll be doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is my learning journey? What are my strengths? And how do I experiment and get there? And for me, where it led me
Mm-hmm.
is to one specific question that I ask myself a ton, which is, who do I want to be right now?
Great.
So this is not just who do I want to be, it's who do I want to be like right now, like while I'm talking with Sue Pahl in
Yes.
front of whoever there is. Who do I want to be? Who I want to be is someone who can be a conduit for people to understand what coaching is and to love it.
Right.
I don't want to be, oh, she's so smart or whatever. Like, how do you really get ego out of your head and just be who you want to be in a moment, which really does require any kind of ego, whether it's chest thumping ego or I'm not good enough ego, still ego.
Right.
How do you do that? And so I started this January 2019, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and just asked myself multiple times a day. I once mentioned that to Marshall Goldsmith, and he just did backflips. So
Yeah.
somewhere in my LinkedIn, there's interviews with him about it. He wrote an article about it, told me to write an article about it, which was published in Inc. And a lot of people now are doing that. And the most touching story is Margot, who is the CEO of Ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
She has that question, who do you want to be right now, on a sticky on her laptop. So whenever she opens up her laptop,
Mm-hmm.
there it is. And as she put it, she said, Carol, the Zoom call during the week that is the thing I want to do the least and is the least important to me
Mm-hmm.
is the most important Zoom call for them. And that's who I want to be. In any conversation, I want the people that I'm talking with to really know I care and that I show up for them.
Wow.
So that's sort of the intentional change theory down to that, who do I want to be right now?
Yeah, and I think that's a really critical part, is not just who do I want to be, but who do I want to be right now? And I
Yeah.
think that really brings it home immediately for people.
That reminds me of another thing Richard Boyatzis says. We've talked about this,
Yeah.
that, and I think it's wonderful you've brought him into your group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he talked about, it's like not the big dramatic issues that affect you stress-wise and health. It's the ding, like, where's
Yes.
my cell phone? Or, really? I'm standing here online and the cashier is talking and talking and talking, and I am in a hurry. Those are the dings that affect
Yes.
your neurological health. And what I love about it is, who do I want to be right now is the question you ask when you're online and the cashier is talking and talking to the person in front of you, and you can just be a whole bunch of things right then. That's when I say, who do I want to be right now?
Absolutely.
I want to be that person. So it's those little dings. And then this is the question that can help pull you out of the little dings where we're not conscious.
Right. It replenishes you. So it's a way to continue to replenish yourself throughout the day by asking yourself that question. Yeah, we did have, we've had Richard up to speak with a client. He is fantastic. I think he actually laid down on the floor and
he crawled around the
ground to demonstrate something for our clients, and they were highly impressed. He is a rock star in my world. So
yeah, he starts out with, you begin your day like this, and with all the dings, you get tired, and then he starts crawling. Like,
he's fantastic. Yes, and he does like to sing respect. Mm-hmm. He gets everybody on their feet singing respect at the beginning of the session. So I absolutely love him. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to have him as a guest one time on this show.
Oh, totally. You have to.
So there's another theory that I think is also central to your coaching, Carol, and that is self-determination theory. So I'm sure you knew I would ask you about that. So can you share a little bit about that, the work of Richard Ryan, and how that plays out in your coaching?
Yeah, and Richard Ryan, by the way, I don't know if you've met him. He looks like Harrison Ford. It's really like disorienting talking with him.
Yes.
I get that all the time. So imagine you're having this conversation with Harrison Ford. Wow. Okay, so self-determination theory. And I think it links with the intentional change theory really well. Because if you think about who do you want to be, well, how do you know who you want to be?
Right.
And how can you be what he calls self-determined? And how can you create environments where you can help others be self-determined?
Right.
So what this is based on is that for people to be self-determined and to be able to find their intrinsic motivation and create that kind of environment, you have to meet the three main psychological needs of people. So ARC, which is their autonomy. Yep. So you're creating an environment where they have choice. You're creating an environment where there's high quality relationships. So people need autonomy, relationships, and the opportunity to be competent. And then backing up from that, we need psychological safety. So he will look at those three things. And there's an incredible number of studies where it shows that if you can create that, people do better on many different dimensions. So, okay, how do you use that in coaching? So I had this one coaching engagement with this guy. I told you I accidentally specialize in these people. And this guy was going to be CEO, and his board said, you can be CEO only if you have coaching with Carol for 1 year, because he didn't listen, he was brusque, et cetera, et cetera. And so he procrastinated for 6 months. So finally, they got him talking to me at 6 months. You can imagine when someone, the opposite of self-determined,
yes,
was board determined, and he was determined not to do it. So, okay, first session. So I finally meet the guy. This is our very first moment. I was like, hi, I'm Carol. And he goes, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so. How long is this going to take? That was the beginning of our coaching relationship.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, actually, I know you've been forced to do this, but I believe that coaching is here to serve you. You're not here to serve the coaching. So it'll take as long as works for you.
Right.
He's like,
yes, sir.
Oh. And so I go, so what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? So we talked about this meeting he just had, and he was his self, not listening, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, so what happened? What happened? And he goes, well, my most valued person left. And I'm like, oh, would you like that not to happen again? And he's like, yeah. And I said, can I give you a tiny tutorial? So I gave him the tiny tutorial about, people have psychological needs. He goes, they do? I'm like, oh my God. Yes, they do. And these are the three. And so he said, well, what if I can't give them autonomy? I go, what do you mean? Well, market share's down, things are tumbling, blah, blah, blah. Now, he was the CEO of the largest manufacturing company of its type in the world. And there was big problems. I said, well, is that forever? He goes, well, no. I said, well, then you can tell them like, it's not forever. So, okay, fine. And then he started talking about the listening. And then I said another tiny tutorial, which is Amy Edmondson and psychological safety through listening. Okay, fine. Next month, again, I'm like, so how did it go? And he's like, it's changed everything. And this is the guy who's like, how long is this going to take?
Right.
And self-determination changed everything because he said, so I talked to my people and
Mhm.
I said, okay, we're going to go in front of the board. And he goes, and I tried the autonomy thing. I said, so I'm going to say, so you guys are going to be in charge and, just, you'll be okay. And he said, and when you're in the meeting, he goes, I remember that psychological safety thing. And
Mm,
so I said to them, you need to know, no matter what happens, I will have your back.
wow.
Because two of the people cried. And they said, no one's ever said they'll have my back before. So this company and these people thrived. And it was, although not step by step and a
No,
little bit of coaching and consultation,
sure.
the self-determination theory really, really changed the company and
Right.
him.
Yeah. And most people here, I'll have your head,
Yeah.
not I have your back. Right.
Oh,
So
got
they
it.
must have been pretty surprised. And what you just described is how coaching really works. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily follow this direct line. It may have an arc, but it also goes forward and backward and sideways. And it's not a linear process. And you really, as a coach, sounds like you had to go with the flow of wherever he had a need and an interest. And so,
Mhm.
sounds like you really got to the heart of what was important to him.
One of the things I'll do when I do mini coach trainings is one of the slides is it's a beautiful picture of a monarch butterfly, and I go, how is coaching like a monarch butterfly?
Mhm.
And the answer, which I know is you look out your yard, you see this butterfly flitting from flower to flower, and it looks kind of like it's okay, it's just flitting from flower to flower.
Right.
But in fact, monarchs migrate thousands of miles from New England to Mexico. Some even make it back. So that's exactly right, that the coaching process, when you can sort of, be aware of your general destination
Mhm.
and help ask questions and pull from the people that you're working with and the leaders, you eventually do make it to Mexico
Right.
and really look nonlinear.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. Well, Carol, as I said before, you really, I think of you as the heart of coaching. I mean,
Mhm.
you didn't just start your coaching practice, you actually built an institute, to find, to create research and provide evidence. So, can you tell me a little bit about the science behind the coaching? We talked about two theories, but really,
Mhm.
what is in the science behind coaching?
That's a great question. And one answer, by the way, is if I can do a nonprofit plug, I get no money from this, is to go to the instituteofcoaching.org and
Mm,
look through the science, because there's massive amounts of science that are congruent with coaching. So
right.
one is the self-determination theory, which I described,
Mhm,
and the intentional change, which is my two favorites.
mhm,
Another one is the research that comes from positive psychology.
right.
And there's a massive amount in terms of what kind of emotional state you want to help people get into that allows them to change.
Mhm,
So one woman, Barbara Fredrickson, and there's also Sonia Lubomirsky, and many of them really talk about how as a leader, and you can think of this now as, when you're the head of HR, and this isn't easy. How do you create positive emotion and positive experience for people?
mhm,
And first of all, a coaching orientation can really help with that. And the positive psychology literature talks about the power of positive emotion.
mhm,
So, for example, this is very evidence-based, but doesn't sound like it, which is, when you're starting a workshop to, maybe have people pair up and say, gee, when you think of the last week, can you think of a moment when you were at your best? Not Olympic, but you either felt good, you were really engaged,
mhm.
or when you think back, it has meaning. And
Right,
then people have a conversation, and what happens is they have an entirely different neurological experience
right.
because you're activating the parasympathetic system of the brain, the openness, reward, creativity, big picture thinking.
Right.
not the threat center of the brain, where you narrow up and you can survive. And we need to be in both at different times. So
Mm,
I would say the hugest body of research is in positive psychology, and positive organizational psychology is a whole nother field that is developing.
mm,
So I would say that really positive psychology, I see it as the body of research that supports the field of coaching. And there's at this point hundreds of I think there's hundreds of thousands of articles, hundreds and thousands and millions of people have been studied showing this stuff works.
right.
But there's now, it's now become core to the field of psychology in general.
Well, absolutely. And you know what they're finding is that coaching is becoming one of the key leadership competencies that is
Mm.
required.
Yeah.
However, it's also the one that they're finding is most underdeveloped in leaders. So I think that's a really important thing for anybody in running a business, whether you're the CEO, the HR person, whatever the role as the leader of the people, is really to consider, how do you get coaching into your organization?
Yeah, and a big one is sometimes people will call me in and they say, "Oh, Carol, will you coach the CEO and bring people in to coach this person and that person?" I take one look at these people and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? These people are gonna accept coaching as much as you might ask them to throw up. It's like not gonna
Right,
happen."
right,
But what they often are interested in is becoming coaches themselves because it
right,
doesn't challenge their identity. So I
right.
think these programs like what you have developed,
Hmm.
and you do brilliantly, in my opinion, and you even have a certification,
Yep.
um, is teaching these leaders how to coach,
Yes.
which then, of course, gets them some coaching experience coming at them as well.
Right.
So I think that I guess I was at some meeting and they were like asking a gazillion people, where is the field developing? And it
Right.
was really coach as leader, leader as coach. And
Right.
that is in the long run going to change organizations, and that can ripple out and change the world, frankly.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And that really is true. If we can get those skills and those tools in the hands of the people who do this work every single day, I think that will, hopefully change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Carol. I'd like to thank you so much for spending this time with me today and with our audience. And I wish you all the best. And thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
You are welcome.